Before we begin the session, I would like to acknowledge that Legal Aid BC and Law Foundation head office is situated on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I would also like to acknowledge that many of you are joining us today from many places near and far, and acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of those lands. Again, welcome to the session today. My name is Baljinder Gill. I'm the Community Training and Outreach Coordinator with Legal Aid BC. Along with me in this session are Sarah Wandel and Alessia Mordini. I must say that without their help, we are not able to run these sessions. So I am really thankful for both of them to be along with me in this session. Before I introduce the speaker today, I have few announcements. All the questions, please post them in chat. I will monitor the chat, and whenever it's the right time, I will interrupt the speaker and ask the question. And also, in today's session, there is a scenario-based study. And in any scenarios, if you feel like speaking up or discussing that, please raise your hand or unmute yourself. You can share your thoughts and ideas with the speaker. If you have any questions, please feel free to, for myself, please feel free to post them in chat as well. So at this note, I'm here to introduce our wonderful speaker who was speaking this morning as well, Kevin Love. Kevin is a lawyer in class community law program, working primarily in the areas of mental health and workers' rights. Kevin has represented clients at all levels of court, both federally and provincially, including the Supreme Court of Canada. Prior to joining the community law program, Kevin worked in class mental health law program, representing clients who were detained in the psychiatric facilities under the criminal code. Kevin represents class on a number of committees, including WorkSafe BC's Policy and Practice Consultative Committee. Kevin chairs the Workers' Compensation Advocacy Group, which is an independent network of worker advocates throughout British Columbia. Kevin acts as the supervising lawyer for the First United Churches Legal Advocacy Program in Vancouver's downtown East Side. Please, along with me, welcome Kevin Love to today's session. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us today.
Thank you so much. And there we go. Can everybody see that?
Yes, Kevin.
Everyone's muted, so I asked the crowd, like everyone's going to chime in when they can.
Fine.
All right. Okay, perfect. So, so the topic today is dealing with overpayments, focusing primarily on employment insurance and the federal pandemic benefit. So this could include obviously EI, CERB, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, and the various Canada recovery benefits. So what I hope to do today is start by talking a little bit about why are people getting overpayments, and then talk about how we can help fight overpayments. And if you can't fight the overpayment, talk a little bit about how you can manage it. How can you at least try to make it a little more, have less impacts on your client? And just, I think everybody probably knows, but when I use the word overpayment, what that really means is somebody got benefits they're not entitled to, and is now being asked to pay them back. And before launching in, I'm putting up this slide because there are now so many darn benefits, so many short forms that I find doing these presentations, especially newer advocates, are probably sitting there scratching their head saying, what are you talking about? You keep using these short forms that I've never heard of. So I'm just going to throw this up at the start for people to scan, just so that when I do use shorthand, hopefully people can have some idea what I'm talking about. So the big ones are the CRB is Canada Recovery Benefit. And then there's two related benefits, the Canada Recovery Sickness Benefit and the Canada Recovery Caregiver Benefit. And then, of course, employment insurance, and then CERB, which is the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. But one thing for those that have been practicing throughout this pandemic will know is that when CERB came rolling out, they called it CERB, but really it was actually two benefits. One was through CRA, which is the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, but the other was through Service Canada for people who could have been eligible for EI. And that one I'll refer to as the EI Emergency Response Benefit, because sometimes it is important to separate the two. So hopefully that sets the stage so no one gets too lost with all my terrible shorthands. Okay, so I want to start by talking about what's causing overpayments, and I'm going to say frankly it hasn't been as bad as I was expecting, but we are starting to see some of this money get called back in, and there's a couple of reasons why. Despite what people say, yeah, sure, there is some fraud, but really there are a lot of other reasons are more common, or at least it's what we're seeing. So the first thing, and this, not really to fault the government, but when they rolled out all these programs, the rules were pretty vague and unclear. And fair enough, they had to make this stuff up sometimes in a matter of weeks. The rules are adjusting on the fly. Nobody has any training. It's not like EI that's existed for 80 years, where you've got a staff of people who, well, ideally are familiar with it. The changes are coming fast and furious, and so people are getting bad information. The other big thing that's causing overpayments is there was very little front-end verification, and for good reason. This again isn't fault government. This is a good thing. What they did was push out a whole bunch of money, say you declare to us you're eligible for it, and we'll check later. But of course, the problem with that is that when you do front-end verification, people don't get the benefits in the first place. When you do back-end verification, people get the money and then get asked to pay it back. And of course, because of who these benefits are targeting, which is people who really needed the money, paying it back is hard. Paying it back takes a big toll. And finally, there are so many different benefits now. There's so many. We'll go through a few of them, but there's so many different benefits that a lot of people got confused and ended up getting on the wrong benefit. They were entitled to something, but they just got the wrong one. So there's all kinds of reasons that we are starting to see overpayments. So I want to look at a couple that are unique to CERB and the successor to CERB that came out about a year ago, which is the Canada Recovery Benefits. There's a lot of reasons that can cause overpayments. People started filing their taxes, which could have implications, or of course people didn't file taxes, which equally has implications. There was a lot of confusion about what counted towards that $5,000 requirement. And again, I don't want to spend too much time going through the nitty-gritty of all the entrance requirements for these things, but at a broad level, for both CERB and the Canada Recovery Benefit, you needed $5,000 to qualify, and there was a lot of confusion about what went in that pot and what didn't, and it changed. Again, as I mentioned, CERB was available for both Service Canada and CRA, and some people got confused and ended up getting it from both. The way these benefits were set up was that EI, or the way the Canada Recovery Benefit was set up was that if you could get EI, get EI. If you can't, we've got something for you called the Recovery Benefit. And a lot of people had EI benefit periods, but as we'll come to, couldn't actually get EI. So they applied for a different benefit, and you basically got money, but from the wrong place. And the government also more recently, what we're starting to see is with the school year ending, the Canada Recovery Caregiver benefit, they're starting to do a little more eligibility verification on that, which is the benefit primarily for parents who are taking care of kids who couldn't go back to school, but also for people who are taking care of other dependents whose care was interrupted. With the school year ending, we're starting to see some them look at some of those claims as well. Common causes leading to EI overpayments. The big one unique to COVID right now is when people got automatically rolled onto EI about a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, sort of end of September 2020. So for folks who don't know, we had CERB, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. That was the first one that came out right when the pandemic hit. One of its purposes was to capture people who didn't qualify for EI, but another purpose of it was to kind of push back a lot of the EI applications because they were overwhelmed and couldn't deal with them. So they introduced the EI recovery benefit to kind of push those applications back, and then people got automatically rolled onto EI in September. But for a lot of people, they weren't actually. They might have gotten through the door in EI, but they weren't actually available to work or didn't meet some of the other EI requirements. So they got rolled onto a benefit they actually weren't entitled to get. And we'll come to this more later in the presentation. And then, of course, with EI overpayments, they're not unique to the pandemic, but just always. Often we get overpayments in EI when the EI people go back and reassess a claim after the fact. So someone may apply and then they go back and say, well, hey, you quit your job or you got fired for misconduct. Or they go back and check and say, hey, you didn't have as many hours or as much earnings as you said you did, or maybe you're not covered by EI at all. And another common one is undeclared earnings. Someone is earning money while on claim but doesn't declare it. That can also create. So there's lots of reasons people can come up with overpayments. So I give that just to sort of set the stage. If people are seeing other reasons why people are getting hit with overpayments, feel free to post them in the chat, and I can we can pause for a second just to sort of finish setting the stage. And just to make sure that we kind of cover what everybody is seeing in their actual practice. So if you're seeing any other reasons that people have overpayments, please do share them. At this point, what I've laid out, and this isn't perfect. This doesn't come from anywhere except my own head. And other people may have things they want to add or take away. But I'm going to go through what I think are the seven key steps to assessing and dealing with an overpayment. So this is how I mentally approach it when someone comes in and says, hey, I'm being asked to pay back money. This is kind of how I break it down in my head. So, and we'll look at these individually. The first that is becoming incredibly important and incredibly hard is, what benefit are you dealing with? And I'll note later on, CERB has kind of become a catch-all for everything. Whatever money people got during the pandemic, whether it's from an expanded and enhanced EI, whether it's the recovery benefit, people are just calling it CERB, whether it came from Service Canada, whether it came from CRA. People are just using CERB, but you've got to drill down a little deeper to figure out what benefit you're actually dealing with. 2 and 3 deal with government time limits. There are time limits for the government to declare an overpayment, and it changes depending on the benefit. For most of the pandemic benefits, we're not close to these time limits yet, but I'm going to flag them because as we go forward, they'll become important. And also, if you see people who have overpayments, of course, that started before the pandemic, you'll need to know what they are. And then number 3 looks forward. Once they do to collect an overpayment, there are time limits on how long the government has to collect it. And once that's passed, the overpayment becomes uncollectible. Those aren't as common, but they're good things to check off. And then the 4th thing you're going to need to do is to assess, okay, what is my time limit and what is my process for helping this client reconsider or appeal? And I wish I could say this was simple, but now we have all these different benefits with different rules, different reconsideration rights, different appeal rights going everywhere. So I'm going to cover those, give you a sense of what they are. It may be a lot to remember. I'll share these slides, but at least if you can flag in your mind that one of the first things I need to do is check my time limit and check what process I have to actually challenge the overpayment. The best kind of overpayment is one that you can make go away instead of trying to manage. So you always want to look for that first. And related, of course, is to look at, is there actually a basis for challenging this overpayment? You know, I don't want to get into a payment plan for an overpayment my client shouldn't have to pay in the first place. So you always want to look at if there's a reason to fight the overpayment before you deal with it. Often there isn't. And if the debt is properly owing, and sometimes clients got paid benefits they shouldn't have gotten, that's a reality. We'll talk a little bit about applying to write it off. And a write-off is where you say, okay, you're right, I shouldn't have gotten these benefits, but because of my circumstances, I shouldn't be asked to pay them back. And lastly, even if they won't write off the debt completely, well, can I at least manage it? If I can't make the debt go away, can I at least get the client into a payment plan that makes sense and that they can manage over time? And there's pros and cons to doing that. And again, we'll jump into those. So, as I mentioned, first things first, what benefit are you dealing with? This has become increasingly hard, and we're getting tons of calls from people who say, I'm being asked to pay back money. And often it's CERB. I'm being asked to pay back CERB, and we look in and it actually isn't CERB at all. They didn't get CERB, they got something different. And again, even if it is CERB, it is important to know whether it was paid through Service Canada or the CRA. Again, there was 2 different streams, one for people who could have been eligible for EI, one for people who weren't. And often, as I mentioned, people are getting rolled onto one or more type of benefit. People who started on the EI emergency response benefit or the Service Canada CERB got rolled onto EI. And so it's actually not one benefit all the way through. So this is actually a really tricky thing. This is actually a really tricky thing to do. So at this point, I'm going to stop, and this is supposed to be just a bit of a brainstorming exercise. There's 67 of you. Why don't we try we'll try not going into small groups for this one, see how it goes. But the purpose of this is just to help. Let's try to share some information for those who have dealt with this about ways you've actually had success figuring out that first question. What benefit did the client get when the client comes in and isn't too sure? So we'll use an example. Richard. Richard comes into your office. He says the government is making him pay back his CERB. What would you do to go about confirming or trying to figure out what benefit Richard actually received and what he's being asked to pay back? So if anybody has any ideas, maybe just drop them in the chat. If it's too much to post into the chat, raise your hand and we can unmute you, and you can just give your answer live. So I'm just going to open the chat here. Yep, call service. Yeah, perfect. Is there a written decision? Written decisions are always great. Even when they're badly written, they at least have some information about who's sending them. Call Service Canada, yep, it's a nightmare. You're probably not going to have a fun time doing that, but it is important. And yet sometimes you'll have to go through CRA. Yeah, that's a great one. How did you apply for the benefit? What was the front door? Was it through Service Canada, or was it through CRA? That's going to provide some great clues. Great ones here also from folks. Again, decision in writing. And also, yeah, absolutely. Most of these benefits, they really pushed people into an online application and management system. So if your client's comfortable sharing their password or going in with you, go into their Service Canada account or their My CRA account. I think that's what they're calling it. And you can actually look and see what the payment history is, and see and see what people got. So those are all excellent answers. And when someone comes in with an overpayment, even if you are pretty sure what they got, it's a good idea to double check, because deadlines, what you do, everything will be a mess if you are challenging using the process for one benefit when it's really another benefit. And I think that's oh, and that's great. Thanks, Arnie. So Arnie has posted a number in the chat there. That's really helpful for people, because it sounds like that number gets you there pretty quick. So great idea. Okay, so this just summarizes all of what you just said. Great minds think alike. I didn't write this slide while you were typing in the chat, but the only thing I'll add to all these ideas is you can sometimes get clues by when the benefits were paid. Because again, we're still talking about CERB because of overpayments, but that program wrapped up mostly this time last year. And we know that a lot of people were automatically transitioned to EI at the end of September. And equally, we know it's not impossible, but there were relatively few regular EI claims between April and September 2020, because they were pushing all these applications back using the EI emergency response benefit, the Canada, the CERB and the EI emergency response benefit. So, you know, the timing can also give you some clues, because some benefits were in effect and others weren't during different periods. Okay, so that's great. So now, all right, we're solid. We go through, we figure out what benefit the client was actually getting. So now, this is rare, but it is important to check. Let's check to make sure the government has actually hit their timelines to declare the overpayment in the first place. So again, it depends a little bit based on the benefit, and the CERB legislation is very brief and a little confusing. So it doesn't actually seem to have a specific deadline, but as I'll come to, it does have a deadline for collecting. But for EI and the recovery benefits, the government gives themselves 36 months if there's no misrepresentation, 72 months if there is a misrepresentation. So again, we're going to be well within that for most of the pandemic benefits. But as we move forward, it is going to be important to check these deadlines. And also, you can see that fighting misrepresentation matters, right? Because it almost doubles the amount of time they have to collect the debt. So, that's something else to be mindful of. So that's number two. Number 2 and 3 are pretty quick, but they are important because sometimes it comes up. So now we look at the flip. The government may have met their time to declare the overpayment, but are they out of time to collect them? So for EI, they give themselves 72 months from when they declare the overpayment to collect. For CERB and the Canada Recovery Benefit, they have 6 years from when the debt became due and payable, but there are exceptions. And this is a big one. Claimant acknowledges a debt or makes a partial payment. So when we talk about payment plans and whether it's a good idea or a bad idea for your client, let's remember that one, that a partial payment towards your CERB debt or your CRB debt can restart that time limit. This one's rare. I wouldn't worry about it. Sometimes the government actually gets a legal judgment. And there is some weird language in there that says they may still be able to deduct the debt after this time limit from other benefits, but I'm not too sure how that's going to play out. And for what it's worth noting that the deadline to collect debt is paused during formal reconsideration or appeal. So if your client spends a year challenging an EI debt, that's going to extend the deadline to collect it by a year. Okay, so that's the government's deadlines. Sometimes you'll do your diligence and catch the government out missing their deadlines. But more important is going to be your deadlines. And whereas the government gives themselves 6 years, you don't get 6 years for most of your deadlines. So again, your right of appeal reconsideration all depend on what kind of benefit you're dealing with. So we'll start with EI. All right, so EI has a well-established reconsideration and appeal process. You can apply for reconsideration within 30 days of the decision being communicated. And you can then, if you don't like that decision, appeal to the SST within 30 days. Two things to note here. The SST deals with both income security like CPP, OAS, GIS, that kind of thing, and EI, and the time limits are different. So so note that it might be 90 days for those other benefits, but EI is 30 days. That's a really important thing to flag. The second thing to flag is that there's also a deadline to apply for benefits if your client hasn't. And you may be wondering why we're talking about this, because we're talking about challenging overpayments, challenging, making overpayments go away. Why do I care about the application? It does happen that your clients applied for the wrong benefits, and one solution might be to get them applied for the right benefit, or at least it can maybe help, or you want to preserve that option. So it is worth noting that the EI application deadline is usually 4 weeks after the interruption of earnings. So for EI, you need that interruption of earnings, generally 7 days, no work, no pay. And they give you 4 weeks after that to apply. If you don't apply within that 4 weeks, it's not like other deadlines where poof, you're late, you can't get any benefits, but it could make it harder to qualify. So, so do keep that in mind. Okay, so for CERB and the successor to CERB, the Canada Recovery Benefits, there isn't this well-established reconsideration and appeal process. Indeed, for CERB, when they wrote that legislation, there's no recon right or appeal at all. They say you're ineligible, you're ineligible. From what I've been hearing from people, they do informal recons, that when they send out a letter, they'll say, if you've got some information that'll change our decision, please send it to us. That's not anything that's written down in the law, but they seem to be doing it. So you do want to take them up on that if there's something to clarify. When they phased out CERB and brought in the recovery benefit, they did bring in a reconsideration right. Okay, it's 30 days. So you actually have a right to do it. But after that, you can't go to the SST. There's nowhere else to go. There's no appeal after that. And another deadline, again, that I'm flagging, because this has created a whole whack of headaches for people who got on the wrong benefit. So for people who got on EI when they really should have been on one of the Canada Recovery Benefits, there's a 60-day deadline to apply after the last day in the week you're applying for. So what that means is, if I'm applying for this current pay period, you find the last day of this pay period, and then you count 60 days forward, and that's your last day to apply. And that's important for a couple of reasons. Number one, again, getting people back on the right benefits if they were on the wrong one, but also the Canada Recovery Benefit looks like it's going to be phased out in late October, unless the government extends it, which they may, but we don't know. But because of that 60-day deadline to apply, you could still have people trying to apply after that date. So the last pay period ends October 23rd, but people could still be applying after that because they have 60 days to apply. So hope that makes some sense. Okay, so now we figured out what benefit the client actually got, again, which is now getting harder. We've looked at whether the government has met their timelines to declare the overpayment. We've assessed what our deadline is. So if we're going to take action, we've marked our deadline, we figured it out, we know where we have to go, what we have to do. And so now the question is, do we have a basis to challenge the overpayment in the first place? You don't want to jump to applying for a write-off or getting a client into a payment plan if they shouldn't have to pay the darn thing in the first place, right? And that's going to require, and it's sort of beyond the time we have for this presentation, that's going to require you to look at the criteria for the particular benefit. So I'm not going to review them all here, but there's lots of information online that you can look up once you figure out the benefit. The government has produced little checklists where you go through and you assess whether you meet all the criteria. So you're going to look those up. But even then, it can be challenging because decision letters often don't tell you which of the criteria they're saying your client missed, which is obviously important. So sometimes you got to do a little digging to try to figure out, okay, where is the problem here? To make it even harder, some clients are going to come to you with what's called a notice of debt, which is the government just sending notices that we want our money, we want our money, we want our money. But that's not the actual decision that created the overpayment in the first place. And often they're coming with the notice of debt, and there can be problems because the decision creating that overpayment may have been made many moons ago. So it can get messy, but do try to assess, do I have a basis for challenging the overpayment? So we'll pause here. And for this one, can we try going into, let's try going into small groups for this. Maybe if we can break it down.
Just 1 second.
How many people do you want in a group, Kevin? There's 60 people here.
Why don't we do, can we do 7 groups?
7
Actually, there's 70
breakouts?
people.
Yeah, like 7 groups of 10, does that?
Okay, just a moment.
There's also a couple of questions, Kevin, that have been in the chat, which I can.
Oh, is there? Okay,
give to
sorry,
you.
I can't really see it. Let me see. Everyone's so mad at me right now because by putting you in breakout groups, everybody who is just having a nice quiet morning is now saying, Kevin, why are you ruining my nice quiet morning here? But
I can let
sometimes
you know. There's a lot of chat in there, but there's one question about what happens if you received incorrect information from the government about what benefit to apply for.
Yeah. Great question. And a lot of, that happened to a lot of people, right? All kinds of bad information was being provided. And often it wasn't, often just because of the changes, people weren't being kept up. So the problem is the rules are the rules. You can't get onto a benefit that you don't qualify for just because you got bad information. And again, the deadlines are making it really hard to go back and undo all of this. So the short answer there is you follow the same process, which is I'm going to look and see, okay, am I on the wrong benefit, or do I have a case that I was entitled to this benefit? But if there's no way to say I should have gotten the benefit I got, you're going to be into things like write-off or managing the debt. And we'll come to that later in the presentation, but that's probably going to be your only option, is to try to say, in the circumstances, I shouldn't be asked to pay it back. Now, the problem is that a lot of the benefits don't really have a process for that. So I will say that this was raised in a meeting with the EI people the other week, that this is a real problem for a lot of people. And the feedback we got is, we hear you, we're live to it, and we're working on it. So what I'm hoping is that I'll be able to send out an update in a couple of months that has better answers for what happens for people who got the wrong benefit. But sadly, right now, if you apply for the wrong benefit based on bad information, there really isn't a lot you can do if you didn't qualify for the benefit you got. But hopefully there'll be some changes. So,
And sorry, just one other question. Someone's asking if you think they'll do wage liens like MSP or CRA.
They can. They can. I haven't been hearing too much about it, to tell you the truth, but it's possible. But I think the more realistic or more common thing that can happen, short answer, yes, that can happen, is going to be scooping other benefits. You know, other benefits, tax rebates, these kinds of things, that, you know, that's what people are going to start losing out on as well. So here's some information. Okay, so Richard comes into our office, and here's what we figured out. Based on the information Richard provides, you determine he is actually being asked to repay EI he received from October to December 2020. Richard was automatically transitioned from CERB to EI at the end of September 2020, but he didn't really understand what was happening. The letter from Service Canada says Richard is being asked to repay EI because he was unavailable for work. So I'll just pause for people less familiar with EI. To keep getting EI, you have to be available for work. And the letter notes that Richard's kids was at home with him and not at school. So for this one, we'll put you into small groups. And if you can just sort of chew on two questions. First, what, given this type of debt, what are Richard's options for challenging it? What system is he able to use? And rather than coming to an answer about things, what questions would you ask Richard? What questions or more information about this situation would you ask Richard to help advise him?
Can I open the breakouts?
Oh, sounds great.
Okay, just a moment.
Okay, good to have everybody back. So we wanted to try that just because I didn't realize there was going to be so many people, and sometimes it's nice to hear a voice that is not mine because I don't have anyone presenting with me. So sometimes it's nice to mix up. But sorry for those who got lost in cyberspace and didn't have a room to join. So why don't we just, using the chat, if people can just maybe put in to the first one, if Richard has a decision saying he's not entitled to EI and has to pay it back, what are the legal options for him, and what would the time limit be? Yeah, that's great. Okay, so right, because this is an EI, and I'm going to come to the Canada Recovery Caregiver Benefit in a moment. But yes, this is an EI decision. Okay, so all this talk about CERB, you know, you get down to the right benefit, you find it's actually an EI problem, which has a very standard appeal system, reconsideration within 30 days, appeal to SST. And so you need to get to the right benefit to know what your deadline is and what you can do. And then people have mentioned the specter of the Canada Recovery Caregiver Benefit. And that's before we go there, what questions would you ask Richard, or what information would you want from Richard? Yep. So the key thing we have to drive at here is, okay, so they're saying he's not available at work. So we might want to know the age of the child. Could the child take care of themselves? yeah, why was the child home? Yeah, Kim, that's an important one. What childcare options did you have? You know, if you you know, if you were able to go back to work, who would be taking care of your kid? Is there someone else? Yeah, Catherine, great. Is there someone else in the home who could have provided the child care? Sure, is place of work closed due to COVID? Another parent. So again, this is all great because the important thing again is to tease out exactly what the issue is, which is they say he's not available for EI. And so we'll come to the second part, but from an EI perspective, the decision you're challenging is you're not available for work. So what you need is to ask questions to show, yes, I am. They're saying it's a problem with his kid being home. So did you have childcare? Could you have had childcare? Also important is were you actually doing a job search? Oh, there you go. No, Noel read my mind. And you know, what type of work were you doing? Were you looking for work in that same area? So again, focusing in on the issue that is actually there. So now let's come to this. People have raised the Canada Recovery Care Giver benefit. Simon, perfect. That's now we start to see where the challenge is. Let's say he wasn't available. Let's say Richard wasn't available. I'm caring for my kid, and maybe the feedback you get says something about that. I don't want to spoil the rest of this because I think we're going to go a little bit further into Richard's situation later on. But that time limit, right, for the Canada Recovery Caregiver benefit of applying within 60 days, you start to see how it's tough to undo when people get on the wrong benefits, right? It's tough to undo because of that 60-day time limit to get back on benefits. But that's all excellent stuff there. Okay, so hold all those thoughts because we are going to come back to Richard in a little bit. But before we come back to Richard, we'll go now to whether there's a basis to write off the debt. So we're kind of moving forward. Again, we've gone through the time limits. We've gone through our time limits. We've looked at whether we have a basis to challenge the overpayment, and we'll come back to Richard's situation. So don't worry, we'll talk a little more.
Gavin, that question is answered by Allison. So it's all
great.
good. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I should know. What was the question?
It was over seniors and the overpayment, returning overpayment of CERB.
Yeah.
But she answered it, so it's all good.
Yeah. If anybody can stomach even more chat about EI, the presentation after this afternoon, we will be talking about that very issue. I promise, if that's a teaser to inspire you to hear yet more about the exciting world of federal benefits. So, but yeah, coming back. Okay, so to write up, so we move forward. We can't get rid of the debt, but is there a basis to what we call write it off? So what does writing off the debt mean? So writing off a debt means to wipe the debt off the government's books. It's a little different than saying the debt is not legally owed, and that's important. You're not saying I qualified for the benefit. You're admitting you didn't. You're admitting the overpayment is there, but you're saying there's reasons I shouldn't have to pay it back. EI has provisions specifically dealing with write-offs. It's covered. We're good. We kind of have some parameters. Tough to use, but we still have some parameters. CERB and the CRBs, with very few exceptions, really don't have anything specific. So again, this is an area we're going to need some law reform on, hopefully, going forward. So starting with EI, I've just noted the two sections that actually authorize a write-off. So generally, it's section 56 of the Employment Insurance Regulation. But they also have write-off provisions for the EI Emergency Response Benefit. This is Service Canada CERB, for those of you who know it better as that. And yes, you're reading all those numbers right. That is the actual section, 4 decimals. It's incredible. But there are separate provisions for the EI Emergency Response Benefit. So here are some common reasons why the government might consider writing off an EI overpayment, but I'm going to skip to the bottom and that note there. Hitting any of these doesn't necessarily mean you get it. These are the indoor. It's always discretionary. All right, so these are just the circumstances where they're allowed to at least consider it. Undue hardship. All right, paying it back is going to create undue hardship for the client. In some cases, if severance becomes payable after the fact, they can look at a write-off. That's not really relevant now because for at least the next year, severance isn't creating EI overpayments anyways. Sometimes CRA goes back, looks at the person's work and says, hey, you didn't work as many hours as is on your record of employment or didn't earn as much. And if that happens and it's not due to a misrepresentation by the claimant, bankruptcy, death, yes, the government will apparently let you die your way out of the debt. So death is one reason. I know it's morbid, but it is there. Very small or uncollectible debts. So if it's under $100 or they think that the money they're gonna have to put in to collect it vastly outweighs the size of the debt, they can also write it off. So again, these aren't automatic. These are just the indoors. These are the situations you have to say to at least get consideration. There are other reasons for an EI overpayment that have one little wrinkle, and it's this. They require that the commission declare the overpayment more than a year after the week in which benefits were paid. Now, this seems really unfair, but this is what this is. Basically, what they're saying is the commission is giving themselves a year to clean up their own mess. So basically, they're saying, okay, we make a mistake and pay you benefits you're not entitled to. If we catch it within the year, we're not going to consider writing it off. But if we catch it after a year, and it's not due to false or misleading information from you, maybe we can write it off. Same with the employer on the ROE. There's a mistake on the ROE, for example, about hours and earnings. If they catch it within a year, they say you can't use this section. If they catch it after a year, they say, well, then maybe you can use it. So, you know, it's always funny to me when the government gives themselves so much time to clean up their own mess and gives claimants so little time to do things often, but I guess that's the way it is. And in both these cases of error, it must not be due to false or misleading information from the claimant, whether accident or deliberate. So for those who have had the misfortune of sitting through one of my EI presentations, you're probably saying, oh, penalties can't be imposed unless the person knowingly gave false or misleading information. And that's true. But when it comes to using the write-off provisions, it doesn't matter if it's accidental or deliberate. If it's your client's misinformation, they won't use this particular error section, they won't use it. And generally by policy, they require that the claimant couldn't have reasonably known that benefits were wrongly being paid. So what this is trying to cover off is the client who applies, they know darn well they're getting benefits they're not, that there's been a mistake and they're getting benefits they're not entitled to, but they don't really say anything or do anything about it. They're trying to cover off the situation where after the fact they say, hey, it's your mistake. The commission may not look fondly on that if the claimant could have really known that there was a mistake but chose not to correct it. Now for the process. And my goodness, I'm going to tell you something and you're all going to try it and you're all going to come back and say that didn't work. because the process changes by the day. It's really unclear. This is the best I have. And if anybody has, I can't really see the chat, but if anybody has information that's better than this, please let's share it amongst ourselves. But you can call Service Canada, and from what I've been told, you need to say you're applying for a write-off, and it needs something called a level 2 decision maker, which means not the person you're talking to on the phone. It has to go to someone else. But there's this weird thing where, although this is an EI debt and CRA does not run the EI program, CRA apparently makes recommendations or has something to say about undue hardship. So you often get bounced back and forth where Service Canada says talk to CRA, CRA talks to Service Canada. This is not the only issue where this happens. It is just yet another issue where this happens. And you just end up wanting to throw your phone through a wall because you've spent your day on hold talking to agents from different departments, and everyone's telling you you're in the wrong spot. So I can't promise that's not going to happen, but this is apparently the Service Canada indoor. There is no right to reconsider or appeal write-off decisions. I would know that. And that's another part of this problem. When they make a mess of things, this is a type of decision you cannot appeal or reconsider. So challenging whether I should have to pay the EI overpayment in the first place, sure, go ahead, have recon, have appeal. Not if they say, no, we're not going to write it off. They consider that a discretionary decision that they're not going to look at again. You might be able to informally say, hey, I got some new information, take another look at this, but there's no legal right to do it. And this brings us to a big problem. I wish I had about 5 slides on this, but unfortunately, this is all I got to sum it up. For other federal benefits, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, the various Canada Recovery Benefits, there's no explicit right for an individual claimant to request a write-off. There's one exception. People may have remembered the news a while back where all these self-employed people applied based on information that they had to have $5,000 gross, but then the government said, no, that's tax, it's your taxable income. So you got to take off certain deductions and expenses and all this. They did a general thing for those people, but for one-off basis on like individual, hardship or this or that, I'm not aware of any basis to request a write-off. There's this thing called the Financial Administration Act, and I'm not going to bore you with it. Theoretically, it gives the government the ability to write off any debt, but I just don't think it's a realistic option. I could tell you for an individual client, it requires like orders in council that are published in like the Canada Gazette. It's just not going to happen for an individual. So all I can say is we've flagged this. It's important because a lot of people got pandemic benefits through no fault of their own, that because of a lack of front-end checking, because of confusion, or as people mentioned earlier, because of bad information they weren't entitled to. For EI, there's a process to write it off, but not for these other benefits. And it is a bit of a problem. So we're trying to get creative, trying to come up with ways to do this. Again, if anybody has ways or has tricks that they've tried and work, please do share them in the chat. But there are certainly none that that I'm aware of. And I'm going to take a second just to look at the chat here. Yeah, absolutely true, Jen. Sorry, I'm trying to.
Basically, I think the only new question is about the impact of overpayments in CERB as opposed to other benefits. Someone's just the most recent comment.
Yeah, and yeah, it's big. It's a lot of money to pay back, right, from clients who got the darn thing because they didn't have a lot of money in the first place. We're going to go to the next one, which is number 7. If we can't write the thing off altogether, how do we manage the debt? And I think that's where a lot of the success is going to happen. But managing a debt and a payment plan doesn't make it go away, right? It's still a burden for the client, and that's a real problem. Okay, so payment plans. So this is probably the last stop on the line. We can't make the overpayment go away. We can't write off the overpayment. Okay, can we structure a plan? Can we structure a plan to get some predictable payments for the claimant? And again, we come back to this really annoying interface between CRA and Service Canada, CRA and the EI Commission. CRA is the debt collector. The tax people, you know, they take care of money. So it's an EI debt, but CRA collects it. And this, so you're dealing with a different agency. That is apparently the number that you call to use to get into a payment plan. Online, I've noticed they have started using a calculator where you put in your income, and I guess that's to help people spit out an idea of what they can expect to have to pay. I don't know if it's mandatory to use that, but it is there. So a couple of notes on payment plans, and sorry, I have a child home sick who is sneaking into my room right now holding signs. Yeah, she appears to be okay. So a couple of notes here. A payment plan does not necessarily stop CRA from scooping other benefits. It's something you may want to clarify as part of the payment plan, because one of the big sorry, folks. Is this very urgent? No. Okay, can I talk to you 2 seconds? Okay. Sorry, people. Life intervenes here. So the you may want to clarify that, because one of the main benefits of a payment plan that I could see would be I get some predictability that you're not going to take these other benefits or rebates, tax returns, you know, these kinds of things. But it's not. Their website says they're not guaranteeing that's not going to happen. Another big thing with payment plans that people sometimes don't realize is a partial payment is a debt acknowledgement. And especially for CERB and the CRB, that can restart that 6-year clock. So we're nowhere near that now. So, you know, it may be beneficial to get into a payment plan. But, you know, if we fast forward, and someone is really coming up on that limit of a debt being uncollectible, it may not be wise at all to make any payments, because you might just trigger the debt having to pay more, when really it might allow you to go back down to what we talked about in step 2 or step 3 and say, hey, your time for collecting the debt is passed. So too bad for you. So do be a little bit cautious on that. Let's come back to Richard. So I've been talking for a while here. Lois, what time are we supposed to be going to here?
So we've got up until 12:15. People, I know it said on Shed 12 o'clock, but anyway, one day it said 12, one day it said 12:15. We're hoping that people are okay until 12:15.
How about I'll split the difference. We'll do 10 minutes and then we'll all be free of Zoom for a few minutes here. So, okay, so let's come back to Richard. And this is going to go over a lot of what everyone in the chat was getting at, probably ahead of me before. Okay, so Richard, here you ask Richard a bunch of questions, and here's what Richard tells you. He says he's an only parent. His kid was not in school because of an underlying condition that makes COVID a greater risk for his kid. And he says flat out, he's not working. He's not looking for work. He hasn't been looking for work he wasn't looking for work while collecting EI. All right. And let's just say, because I think it was a really great question, the people who said, well, what's the age of the kid? Let's say this is a 6-year-old kid. So this is not a kid who's going to be able to take care of themselves. My 10-year-old clearly is not taking care of herself right now, but we'll leave that. do you think, so we can use the chat again. Do you think an application for reconsideration would have a strong chance of succeeding on the availability issue? So again, I'll try to look at the chat here. Getting a lot of hard no's. Yeah, right. Okay, so EI requires you to be available for work, and they're ruthless. And it's really, we need some change on this. You can be unavailable for work for very good reasons, and reasons that are above your control, but you're still not available for work. So yeah, I think here, we don't have a job search. One question you may want to ask, and I didn't put in this scenario that might change your answer. A lot of other great questions from other people around. Is there someone else who could provide the childcare? So he says he's an only parent. So maybe there's no one else in the household, but maybe grandma, grandpa, maybe there's somebody else who could provide the childcare, and it's reasonably certain. But this whole I haven't been looking for work is also going to create a barrier in any event. But all those questions were good ones, and again, really emphasizes why you got to draw out from your clients all the information. So and some people give little hints to this when we first talked, or when we last talked about Richard. What other options could you recommend for Richard? So again, if you just want to use the chat. Yeah, so that was one that people brought up, the caregiver benefit. So thanks, Sonia, for that. Oh, and now I've made the chat so big I can't see anything. Okay, so the caregiver benefit, but let's say this applied to the last school year. The overpayment again is from last year. So what's going to be the problem with the caregiver benefit? Yeah, there it is. Okay, so the 60 days, you can only apply 60 days back. So great, if it's ongoing now. I mean, the caregiver benefit provides, I think, 42 weeks. There's a big chunk there, but not all of that's accessible to poor Richard here. He might have qualified the whole time, but because he didn't apply, he's got a problem, because we can't go back more than 60 days, right? So for that period where he was getting EI, where he was caring for his kid, this is the frustrating part. Richard was eligible for a benefit. He really was. But it wasn't EI. He got the wrong one. So, and now, can he go back and correct it? And I mean, that's a good question, Jen. Was he notified of the EI changeover? I don't know exactly what they told people. Again, it's the best intentions. It's the rule of best intentions. What they were saying was, okay, we've got all these people. CERB is coming to an end. Do we really want to make all these people apply for EI? Do we want to? Your offices would have been flooded. We don't want to do that. So, okay, sensible thing. If we have the information we need, we're just going to roll them onto EI. And that worked great for most people. But a lot of people who, especially those who aren't familiar with the EI program, may have been ineligible for EI for other reasons. Most notably, I'm caring for a kid, for example. But there are other ones, people who were sick or not able to work for reasons unrelated to COVID. They could at least get EI sickness, theoretically, but once that runs out, it's tough to, it's really tough to sort out. So I'm not sure, if he was notified of the EI, if he wasn't notified of the EI changeover, again, the frustrating part of this is that if you got EI and weren't eligible for it, even if they treated you really unfairly, it's really hard. They can't just give you the EI because it would be unfair not to. If the law says you're not entitled to it, you're not entitled to it. Now, there are some, and the other thing they're going to say is it still did require people to file their declarations. or, every 2 weeks, again, back to the question of the 2 weeks, and that does require people to say they are available. A lot of people didn't really understand exactly what they were sending in, but they would probably use that to say you weren't available, but you should have known, or you should have told us you weren't. So, okay, so out of time to apply 60 days. Okay, so we've got an EI debt. What other options? If we don't think, yeah, there we go. Okay, so we've gone through our levels. They're in time to declare the debt. They're in time to collect it. If he's into your office, again, the deadline to challenge a decision runs from the date it's communicated in the federal world, not from the date the decision is made. You're probably in time to review or reconsider this or appeal it, but the grounds aren't very strong. So maybe we move to write off here. Filing a reconsideration or appeal, there's really no harm. The worst, for those that have called me, my common refrain is the worst they say is no. But maybe we move here to a write-off. And yeah, so now we're going to start asking about, well, let's throw it in. So what further, to assess a possible write-off, what further questions would you have for Richard here? Or what information? Yeah, income expenses, sure. Yeah, that would be a good one. Do you want to tell them to bring in some laws to fix this mess for people? Yeah, that's a good one. And there's one more that may be probably, you can probably, yeah, what's his current status? Always good to know. And the other one, just so you can tell what range of write-offs are available, is was the overpayment declared within that year of when benefits were paid? Here, the answer is probably yes, right? Because we're in early October. But that's something you're also going to want to check up on, especially where there's an error by the commission. Yeah, and his child at home due to risk of COVID, and if so, then at least maybe we can apply for some caregiver benefits now, right? Again, keeping that deadline in mind, there may be some, at least some periods we can access within that 60-day time limit. So, all right. And sorry, I tried to read the chat as fast as I could. I'm very sorry if I missed people's comments or questions. That is all from me. So I'm happy to, we've got a little bit of time if people have questions or want to share any experiences or pearls of wisdom they have from dealing with these types of cases.
The question that got resolved in the chat, Kevin, but that you didn't really see, was someone asking about people losing their GIS because they received CERB.
Yeah, yeah.
And Alison explained it's not an overpayment issue, but still an issue.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's exactly it. So I'll probably just be repeating what Alison said and what Alison knows far more than me about, but it's not an overpayment. So what's happening is that all these benefits are taxable income. So the way GIS works is about in the summer, I think it's June or July, I can't remember. They go and assess what you're going to get, but it's based on your taxable income from the previous year. And so it was really good because when they rolled out this pandemic relief, a lot of people who weren't eligible for anything beyond OAS, GIS, maybe a little CPP, suddenly got a little bit more, which was really helpful for low-income people. But the problem, as Alison points out, is that CERB, EI, the Canada Recovery Benefits, all taxable income. It's all taxable income. So now fast forward to July of this year. Well, people who used to have nothing but CPP and OAS, I don't think impacts your GIS anyways, but nothing but CPP really to report, suddenly they've got all this other income. So going forward, it's not an overpayment, it's that or a deduction, it's that their calculated GIS, which is based on the taxable income, is suddenly lower. and that's a problem. So to tantalize you again, to return for more fun talk about benefits, we'll be going over some solutions that still aren't really solutions people are having problems with to this, which includes there is a way to go back to the GIS people and say, hey, don't assess my income based on my last tax year because it's changed. It's changed. This whole CERB stuff is gone. And now I've got nothing but CPP going forward. And then they can calculate the GIS based on your income going forward. But even that, and maybe some people in this, the group have some information on this, even that's problematic where they're saying they can't do that depending on how you got your CERB. They can do it for CERB through Service Canada, but not for CERB through CRA. They don't post the stupid form online, so you have to call in, wait on hold, and then get the form sent to you. So more on that this afternoon, but I see some other questions popping up here.
Yeah, there are two more questions there, Kevin.
Okay.
I can read the question to you.
No, I think I got it here. Is it this one?
Okay.
If the senior got served fraudulently and cluelessly, isn't that an overpayment? That person would have an overpayment issue in addition to losing GIS. And that's a great point. That's a really good point. And I don't have a great answer. So I think, Becky, what you're getting at here is, okay, I got CERB and you're now telling me I got to pay that back. Well, that's terrible. That's bad. I now got this big debt. But now are you seriously going to tell me that on top of that, this CERB money that you're now telling me I shouldn't have gotten is going to reduce my GIS? Like, you're hitting me twice. And I would like to think, that GIS issues can be reconsidered and appealed. And I think like that is actually, there might be an argument to say that this shouldn't count in the first place. Because if I got to pay it back, I never really got it. But leaving that aside, I think that would be a strong basis for trying to get the GIS set based on current income. Interesting question. I haven't seen or heard of that scenario, but I could see it as being very realistic. So if others have insight on that, please, please drop it in. Will the government claw back money from people's PWD to pay back CERB? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think normally, I don't think that would happen. I think there are ways where, going the other way, in some cases, clients are asked to sign what's called, oh, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, consent to deduct and whatever, like when you're getting CPPD or something, you got to sign this form saying, or yeah, if I'm entitled to this, I will pay my federal benefits to you, provincial government. But I don't think the federal government could scoop provincial PWD for a CERB debt. If anyone's heard of that, maybe post in the chat, but I think the answer is no. I hope the answer is no. It better be no. Are GST checks ever affected by CRA collections? Yeah, I think so. Yes, I think I've heard, yeah, like that's one of those rebates that they'll scoop. If anybody has confirmation of that, again, please post in the chat, but I think the answer is yes. And this is precisely the kind of problem. And would they garnish wages? Sure, I bet they would if someone had steady income. But for a lot of the clientele we serve, what we're really concerned about is protecting these core. Oh, sorry, and Arnie, you're saying, sorry, and Arnie, are you saying that with respect to the GI, sorry, with the taking PWD, or with respect to the GST checks for income assistance? Yes, yeah. And then Kate has, sorry, I'm trying to, this is good discussion, so I'm just trying I guess I don't have to read this aloud because you can all see it. But so yeah, Arnie says they can't touch PWD, and I'd agree. And then Kate has said they're not making clawbacks, but the ministry is holding checks because recipients did not report to the ministry that they had made the income to receive CERB. Oh, I see. Okay. So this again, this foreshadows a little bit about what we'll be talking about this afternoon. And let me, Kate, I hope I've got the essence of what you're saying here. And this goes for CPPD a little bit too. They may not deduct, but you're supposed to declare your income to the PWD people. So if you haven't been declaring any income, but then suddenly you got CERB, the PWD people are going to be like, or the ministry, we'll just call them, are like, hey, hold on a second, where did that money come from? And it raises red flags. I hope, Kate, I've captured what I hope, Kate, I've captured what you were getting at there. And then Sonia, Sari will grab the GST, but you can call in to lift that recapture for single clients with income below 1,500. Great, that's awesome information, Sonia. And Sonia, I'm going to ask, even though I'm supposed to be answering questions, I'm asking you a question now because this is a great point. If there is a debt, Sonia, and they're scooping the GST, is that one of those cases where they'll require the claimant to be in a payment plan? Or if there's an overpayment, have you ever known CRA to say, yeah, okay, no way, okay, so that's a good thing to know if they're scooping these benefits that are really designed to target really low income people and are pretty critical for people like GST rebates. That's great. They'll take they'll take the refunds. Yeah. And so again, when we get to step 7, you want to exhaust your options to make the debt go away. First, sure, but sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes people just earn money, and this is what Sonia's talking about here is really helpful. These are all the tips and tricks to, when you get to the end of the line, to at least do damage control in terms of what they're going to take and the impacts on your clients. So I said I would only keep you here for 10 more minutes. It's now 12:15. So I'm actually 1 minute over time, but that was really helpful discussion, and I really I learned some good stuff there too. So thanks to everybody. If people have any more questions, I'm happy to stick around for a couple of minutes, but other people may have lunch they want to eat. So
and also people should know that Kevin will be presenting again this afternoon. And Kevin will get a copy of the chat discussion in case that there's anything you want to follow up on.
Totally.